They said the signature was mine, that I had waived my rights, that I was alone. But one forgotten log, one printout, and one quiet request would shatter their story and someone else's career. The precinct smelled of burnt coffee and old toner. My desk still had that stubborn ring from someone's forgotten mug. I stared at the half-empty cup in front of me, steam curling up like a silent question. Across the bullpen, people talked too loud about things too small. None of it mattered now, not after what Lieutenant Harrow had just said. "You signed that waiver," she repeated, dropping the incident report like a gavel. "You're on your own." The room didn't fall silent, but in my chest something did. That strange vacuum when your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up. I looked down at the corner of the form. Miranda waiver, PD 38. A 3-line signature scribbled beneath my typed name. Except, I never signed it. 2 days ago, I was pulled into an interrogation room with a detainee. Rookie error, they claimed. I shouldn't have gone in without backup, especially not with the body cam glitching. The guy walked, and someone needed to take the heat. According to Harrow, I'd signed off full legal responsibility on the Miranda waiver. No legal rep, no backup officer. Just me, the suspect, and a surveillance gap. Convenient, isn't it? I pushed the report back toward her, careful not to let my voice crack. "Can you pull the original digital signature file?" Harrow crossed her arms. "Why?" I stared her down. "Because I don't use cursive in official documents, and that signature's not mine." The air shifted, not enough to stop the snickering from the nearby desk, but enough that Harrow blinked slower than usual. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling fan until 3 a.m., my mind replaying every second of that shift, every report I'd touched, every box I'd checked in our Sign Verify V2.3 system. I knew my habits: 3 spaces after the date, all caps for internal notes, and digital signatures saved to my user profile. If someone copied my name onto that form, they either faked it outright or used a template. Next morning, I walked into records before the day shift even clocked in. I asked for a printout of my registered digital signatures from Sign Verify V2.3. No smiles, no jokes, just a cold, precise request. The clerk, a bored guy named Les with a badly hidden stash of crossword puzzles, didn't ask questions. "Is this about PD 38? He asked quietly as the printer warmed up. I froze. "Why would you think that?" He shrugged. "Heard Harrow talking in the hallway. Said if internal affairs pokes around, she's clean. The girl signed it herself." The paper rolled out, still warm when I grabbed it. 4 versions of my verified signature. All clean, digital, exact. And not one of them matched the scribbled ink on that waiver. Not even close. Internal affairs didn't knock. They never do. They just appear, like smoke under a door, silent and choking. I was called in at 10:17 a.m., not by my supervisor, but by an anonymous calendar invite labeled Review Incident 43B. The room was cold, colder than usual. 2 seats, 1 recorder, 1 printed copy of Miranda waiver PD 38 in a clear plastic sleeve at the center of the table, as if it were some relic under glass. Detective Alvarez from Internal Affairs sat across from me, flanked by Jules from IT, quiet, observant, the type who could crash your career with a single log file. "We're here to compare your known digital signature samples to the one used on waiver PD 38. Alvarez began, calm and rehearsed. I handed over the Sign Verify V2.3 printout. "These are all my registered versions." Jules took it silently, spreading the pages on the table. He placed the waiver next to them. The difference was immediate. Mine were machine perfect, clean, exact, with consistent keystrokes and hash code validation stamps. The waiver. It was messier, handwritten, but not in my hand. Alvarez raised a brow. "You're saying this was forged?" I nodded. "Or copied from a template, but it didn't come from my account. Your credentials weren't compromised?" "No," I leaned in. "But someone accessed the file while I was off duty. Check the IT log for edits made past 2200 hours last Wednesday. My badge was in the locker." Jules tapped into his tablet, scrolling. His eyes didn't change, but I knew the moment he saw it. His left thumb stopped moving. "Waiver PD-38 was modified at 2246, accessed from Terminal A17. That's Lieutenant Harrow's workstation." The silence was suffocating. Alvarez didn't look at Jules. She looked at me. "And why would she sign a Miranda waiver on your behalf?" "Because I asked the suspect if he wanted a lawyer. He said yes. Harrow told me to process anyway. I objected, loudly. Next day, the suspect's gone, and I'm holding the bag." Jules checked something again. "Also," he said slowly, "the signature field on the waiver has no biometric data. That box normally captures pressure data and stylus velocity." "Which means?" Alvarez asked. "It was likely pasted from a static image file." They both looked at each other. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in Alvarez's posture. I stood. "May I ask that this finding be added to the report?" Alvarez gave a curt nod. "We'll escalate to the DA's office. You're not to discuss this with anyone." I stepped into the corridor feeling colder than I had inside that room. Outside, chatter continued. HR walked by laughing with someone from forensics. A Zoom call in the glass-walled conference room flashed muted faces like a panel of ghosts. At my desk, someone had left a fresh printed copy of PD-38. Bold red Sharpie underlined the signature line. Below it, "You signed this." No one saw me crumple it. No one saw me slide it into the shredder. But someone would hear what internal affairs found. I wasn't alone anymore. You won't believe what she discovers in the next chapter and how deep this goes. The silence inside that station. It's louder than most screams. Stick around, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. What would justice look like here? She's not done, and neither is the truth. By the time the DA's office called me in, word had already started to ripple through the precinct like a slow, deliberate leak. Eyes that once avoided mine now lingered too long. HR had gone silent, and every time I passed the break room, it felt like the volume dipped a few notches too quickly. The conference room on the 5th floor was all glass and chrome, built to impress defense attorneys and donors. But today it held just me, Assistant District Attorney Lena Chong, and a small laptop humming quietly as Jules from IT patched in via Zoom. The digital copy of Miranda waiver PD-38 hovered on the screen. Jules had enhanced it, isolated the signature layer, stripped the timestamp, then cross-referenced it with log activity from Sign Verify v2.3. "There's no keystroke metadata," he explained calmly, his voice echoing through the speakers. "No user authentication trail. That document was either created offline or introduced into the system as an override." Lena leaned back, arms folded. "And the override came from Harrow's terminal?" Jules nodded once. "Yes, at 2246. There's also a folder titled Templates April 2023 on her system. Inside, multiple unsigned Miranda waivers with editable fields. One matches the structure of PD-38 byte for byte, minus the date and signature." I felt my breath catch. Templates, pre-signed forms, ready to fill in and bury. Lena glanced at me. "Did you know she had access to templated waivers?" I shook my head slowly. "No one mentioned it in training. All forms were supposed to be generated fresh for each subject. Policy says so, she confirmed. But if she's been bypassing the system... She didn't finish the thought. Jules continued. Also, her system used an unauthorized USB key 5 minutes before the form was uploaded to the main server. That's when the signature was injected. The implications landed heavy. Not only had Harrow faked my involvement, she'd used a method that bypassed system-level checks. She wanted it to look routine. She'd gambled that no one would challenge the paperwork, and she almost won. Lena clicked through a few more tabs, reviewing my printout from Sign Verify v2.3. The comparison is clear. Not only are your digital signatures clean and traceable, but the waiver doesn't match any of them, not in style, data footprint, or origin. She looked up. You're cleared. As far as this office is concerned, you're the victim of forgery. That word, forgery, didn't feel like a triumph. It felt like the first breath after being held underwater. What happens now? I asked. We open a separate inquiry into Harrow. You may be called as a witness, but you're no longer under review. The district attorney will issue a statement by end of week. Until then, you stay quiet. This can't leak until we're ready. As I stood, Lena reached across the table, her expression softer than before. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Most don't. Outside, the city buzzed without knowing a thing. The air smelled like wet asphalt and burnt pretzels from a vendor down the block. But in my pocket was the printout, the proof, the thin page that could take down a career or save mine. I walked back into the precinct, head held high, not because I won, but because I had survived something I never saw coming. And she hasn't even seen the real storm yet. The next chapter changes everything. I wasn't expecting applause, but I also wasn't ready for the freeze. When I walked back into the precinct, it was like someone had turned the air to glass. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Keyboards fell silent. Even the hum of the ancient copier by the HR office cut out for a second, as if the building itself paused to take stock of me. No welcome back, no nods, just eyes, watching. I moved to my desk, slipped the signed statement from the district attorney into my top drawer, and opened my email. 34 unread messages. Half were from HR. A few were department memos. The last was marked confidential, notice of system audit. I clicked. The subject line read, Review of Terminal Access Logs, Sign Verify v2.3. There it was again, the system, the ghost in every room, the silent witness that remembered what humans forgot, or pretended not to see. I scrolled to the bottom. The audit would begin the next morning. Workstations, USB usage, badge-ins, document edits. Every fingerprint the precinct had tried to erase would be resurrected by keystroke. I logged out. Outside, I spotted Officer Mendez in the hallway, whispering to someone from IT. The second he saw me, he stiffened, nodded, then disappeared into the stairwell. In the copy room, I caught another officer, Jennings, hovering near the printer tray, flipping through pages he wasn't supposed to have. The minute he noticed me, he dropped them face down and backed out with a stuttered excuse. I didn't need confirmation. The culture had shifted. I was radioactive now. Back at my desk, my chair creaked as I sat and pulled up the precinct-wide Zoom calendar. One item caught my eye. Internal Affairs Briefing. Lit to Harrow, 10:00 a.m., interview room 4. A chill ran down my spine. Harrow was being questioned, and they were doing it in-house. I stared at the screen, wondering what her face would look like when they confronted her with the printouts, the logs, the digital signature overlays. My phone buzzed. Text from a blocked number. You really want to go through with this? People don't forget rats. I stared at the message, took a screenshot, forwarded it to my lawyer, then deleted it. By lunch, Harrow hadn't emerged from interview room 4. Word was, she hadn't said much, just sat there, stone still, like she was waiting for this, like she had something in her back pocket. That thought clung to me the rest of the day. Because the deeper the system digs, the more it risks exposing its own rot. And sometimes rot fights back, but she's not ready to back down. Next chapter, the system retaliates. The system never retaliates in obvious ways. It doesn't shout or threaten. It just shifts, quietly, strategically, like a chess player who already moved 10 steps ahead before you noticed the board had changed. It started with my access. Monday morning, I logged into the precinct database to check on my current caseload. The screen blinked red. Access denied, clearance re-evaluation in progress. No explanation, no override. 5 minutes later, my email locked. 10 minutes after that, my precinct badge stopped working on the evidence room door. I watched as Officer Lund tapped his card and walked through without even glancing back at me. I was still on payroll, still assigned, still breathing. But digitally, I didn't exist. In the hallway outside HR, I overheard words like administrative recalibration, internal sensitivity, and the one that made my blood run cold, containment. I wasn't being punished. I was being frozen. I cornered Sergeant Wilkes by the vending machines and asked him point blank what was happening. He bit his lip. Look, you embarrassed people in the wrong places. This whole mess with Sign Verify v2.3, the higher-ups are jittery. They're running a quiet sweep on anyone who accessed the waiver logs. He paused. They're not looking to punish you. They're just isolating you. Same thing, I said flatly. He didn't deny it. At lunch, I found my name scrubbed from the active duty roster. Not removed, just grayed out. Like I was in limbo. A placeholder. A name waiting to be replaced or erased. And yet, Harrow was still here. Still in her office. Still carrying her clipboard like nothing happened. She hadn't been suspended. Hadn't even been reassigned. Internal affairs might have cracked open the file, but the wheels of bureaucracy grind slow, and she knew it. Every time I passed her, she offered me a faint smirk. Not a gloating one, a calculated one. Because she wasn't done, and the system wasn't either. That night, I went home to find a letter taped to my apartment door. No return address, just 2 lines scrawled in sharp, angry handwriting. It was your word against hers. You should have shut up. Inside the envelope, a photocopy of my first ever disciplinary note, one I hadn't seen in years, dated, yellowed, and long resolved. Someone had gone digging, and they wanted me to know. I wasn't supposed to fight back. I wasn't supposed to dig. I was supposed to sign, stay silent, and disappear under the weight of a false waiver. But they miscalculated something. I had truth, and now I had proof, and soon I'd have an audience. Next chapter. One mistake from her past resurfaces, and it's not buried deep enough. The archives smelled like dust and disinfectant, a forgotten wing of the department, where old reports and disciplinary logs went to be buried under decades of silence. I hadn't planned to go there, not at first. But the letter taped to my door changed everything. That someone could unearth a file from over 6 years ago and weaponize it against me meant they had access. Deep, possibly unrestricted access. So I followed the same trail backward. The room was unmanned, of course. Just shelves, scanners, and an old terminal that still ran on an outdated login shell. I used my badge. It didn't work. Then I tried the generic records temp guest account. And surprisingly, it opened. I started typing. My name, Harrow's, the incident report from PD 38, then every recorded Miranda waiver filed by her terminal in the last 12 months. There were over 70. Half of them had the same anomaly: static image signatures, injected metadata, missing biometric logs. The names changed, the suspects didn't know, but the pattern was there. And worse, 3 of the signatures matched the style of mine. Copied, pasted, altered. The most recent one, dated just 6 weeks ago, had another officer's name on it, Officer Renee Mills, transferred out of our precinct suddenly. Rumors said she took a leave of absence for personal reasons. I thought nothing of it, until now. I pulled her file, denied access. I checked the shift logs, denied. Then I searched Harrow's history on Sign Verify v2.3 using cross-reference mode. That's when I saw it. Renee Mills had filed an internal complaint 2 weeks before her transfer. The subject? Forgery of suspect waivers. The investigating officer? Lieutenant Harrow. The case status? Closed. No further action. I sat back in the creaking chair, heart pounding. It wasn't just me. I wasn't the first, and Harrow wasn't just protecting herself. She was erasing threats. Renee tried to fight and disappeared into silence. But I wasn't going to vanish. I copied everything: logs, screenshots, PDFs. I backed them up twice, one to a drive in my locker, the other to a private cloud account under a name only I knew. As I stood to leave, the overhead light flickered once, then again. Footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. Slow, deliberate. I slipped the drive into my boot, shut the terminal, and walked toward the other exit. Because now I had more than a forgery. I had a pattern, a paper trail, a motive, and next time they came for me, I'd be the one holding the file. She found the cracks. In the next chapter, she blows one wide open. They say truth doesn't need defending, just revealing. But that's a lie. Truth, when it threatens the wrong people, becomes dangerous. It needs armor. It needs strategy. It needs to be louder than silence and smarter than fear. I spent the next morning crafting the report like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Not just files and screenshots, but a narrative. Dates, cross-references, recurring errors in metadata, and the signature anomalies tied to Lieutenant Harrow's terminal. I formatted it in the exact layout used by Internal Affairs, right down to the font. It had to look like it belonged. Then, I did something Harrow never expected. I printed a full copy on the precinct's network printer, the one outside HR. When the pages emerged, collated and still warm, I walked them intentionally down the hall. Every step, every glance, every whispered word was a thread being pulled. I passed dispatch, records, the break room, IT. I let them all see. Not what was in my hands, just that I was walking with purpose, unafraid. I slid the report across to Alvarez in Internal Affairs without a word. She skimmed the cover page. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. You're aware this implicates not only a commanding officer, but exposes systemic failure to review digital forensics procedures. I nodded. Yes, and I'm aware that if this gets buried, it means the system isn't just broken. It's complicit. She tapped the first page with her pen. We'll need to verify everything. You realize this could trigger an official audit across multiple precincts? That's the idea. She looked at me like she was seeing someone new. Stay available. We'll be in touch. By afternoon, a silent storm swept through the building. IT servers were pulled offline for maintenance. Sign Verify v2.3 went into diagnostic mode. Multiple officers were called into quiet interviews, including Harrow. She passed my desk once, eyes burning. Not rage, calculation. She knew I'd gone too public for this to be buried quietly. But still, I could feel her planning. She wasn't out, not yet. Then, a ripple I didn't expect. An officer from Precinct 47 sent me a message, anonymously. Got this forwarded to me, same signature issue. Suspect walked. I thought I screwed up. I didn't. Thank you." The cracks were spreading, and for once, they weren't meant to break me, but to break them. Still, something itched in the back of my mind, a feeling like I'd missed a detail, one line, one variable no one had considered yet. Then I found it, hidden deep in an older IT compliance report, a reference to auto-populated digital assets in beta testing by precinct leadership, a feature that allowed certain waivers to preload, with administrator override enabled. Only 2 logins had clearance for it. One was Harrow, the other, someone I never expected, and if I was right, this went even higher than her. Next chapter. The truth leads to someone above Harrow, and it's about to implode. The name hit like a cold slap. Captain Ezra Dalton, decorated, untouchable. The one who preached integrity audits during department meetings and shook hands with the press after every major case. His badge number was on the override list, not as an error, not a technicality. As primary administrator of the auto-population feature in Sign Verify v2.3. I double-checked the logs, terminal ID, admin EZD01 override enabled, March 3rd, 03:14 a.m. First test waiver filed under Miranda waiver PD38, template v0.1, PD38. The same waiver used to try and frame me. I stared at the data so long I forgot to blink. Then I felt it, that tremble behind the ribs when a puzzle starts to form, and the picture turns out uglier than expected. Harrow didn't just use a system, she was the test run, the tool. Dalton built the loophole. He didn't plant the signatures, but he made it possible. A time-saving measure, the IT memo said, for use in high-pressure arrest environments where documentation must be expedited. No review board, no accountability, just 2 people with elevated access and enough arrogance to believe no one would notice. But I had, and now Internal Affairs had my report. I couldn't go straight to them with Dalton's name, not yet. This wasn't just a forged signature anymore. It was departmental corruption, dressed up as innovation. If I moved too fast, it would be my word against his reputation, and his reputation was bulletproof. So I went back to records. Again. This time, I requested the audit logs from precincts using the auto-populate patch in the past year. It took 2 hours and a sympathetic tech named Alina, but I got what I needed. Over 140 waivers filed using the same beta feature. Out of those, 21 showed no biometric metadata. 12 were tied to Harrow. 4 to other lieutenants. 5 to Dalton's admin terminal directly. He hadn't even hidden it well, and in one, dated just 2 months ago, the suspect never waived their rights. The waiver was pre-filled, signed, stamped, closed. I cross-referenced the arrest report. The suspect, Isaac Nunez, filed a complaint, said he never saw the waiver form, said his lawyer was denied access. The case had quietly disappeared. Now it had a second life. I compiled everything, again. This time, I didn't send it to Alvarez. I sent it to 2 investigative journalists, 1 civil rights attorney, and the Office of Public Integrity's anonymous Dropbox. Then I printed 1 copy, sealed it in an envelope, and walked it directly to Captain Dalton's inbox. Not his hand, not his office, just the tray, quiet, clean, in full view of a dozen staff. When I turned around, I didn't look back, because sometimes the loudest scream is the sound of evidence delivered with a whisper. And this was going to blow a hole clean through the foundation. Next chapter, Dalton responds, not with denial, but with a trap. The trap was elegant, too elegant. When you fight someone like Dalton, you don't expect fire, you expect frost, slow, creeping, precise, and that's exactly what I walked into. The morning after I delivered the envelope, the precinct was humming with an artificial calm. No hushed whispers, no sidelong glances. too perfect, like the silence of a hallway just before the bomb squad declares it's safe. At 9:03 a.m., I was called into a special debriefing in Zoom conference room 2C. The invite looked standard, plain white background, a single sentence. Scheduled department-wide compliance review on digital waiver protocols. Your presence required. When I joined, 5 others were already in the virtual room. 2 HR reps, 1 legal counsel, Jules from IT, and Dalton. He smiled as he greeted me, like a politician holding a child for the camera. "Officer," he said, "thank you for joining." No mention of the report, no hint that he knew what I knew, just a spreadsheet on the screen and a flowchart outlining acceptable digital authorization pathways. They were rewriting the system retroactively. Dalton spoke smoothly. "We've identified discrepancies in the deployment of Sign Verify v2.3, especially regarding administrative override usage. The department has agreed to classify all waiver-related actions under an internal compliance window retroactive to the past 12 months. My mouth went dry. He was burying it, all of it, under the guise of protocol adjustments. If every forged waiver was now labeled a system miscommunication or configuration error, then no one forged anything, no one lied, no one needed to be held responsible. It would be swept, sanitized, forgotten. "Do you have any concerns about the new classification structure?" Dalton asked, eyes locked on mine. I did. 1,000. But I said nothing, because that's when I realized something chilling. The report I printed, the one I hand-delivered, it never made it to him. Dalton wasn't responding to my evidence. He was responding to the leak, the one I sent outside, to the press, the lawyers, the watchdogs. He was preparing his defense, getting ahead of the narrative. And worse, he wanted me in that Zoom room to lock me in as a witness to his reforms, so that when the investigation exploded, he could say I was present, that I didn't object, that I'd been part of the compliance rollout, a neat little cage. When the meeting ended, I didn't log off immediately. I watched Dalton's face as he thought the screen had frozen. His smile dropped, his mouth twitched. He muttered something to someone off camera, only one word caught clearly. Containment. That's when I knew he wasn't just protecting himself. He was building a wall around the whole department, and he planned to brick me in with it. But walls work both ways. They can shield, or they can trap. And I wasn't done building my way out. Next chapter, the fallout begins, and this time, it's public. The headline broke at 7:42 a.m. Exclusive, internal forgery allegations emerge in city police waiver scandal. Multiple precincts under review. It was all there, the signature anomalies, the manipulated Miranda waivers, the auto-populate feature in Sign Verify v2.3. Even the name no one dared whisper before, Captain Ezra Dalton. I hadn't written the article, but I had written the truth, and someone had finally printed it. By 9:00 a.m., the precinct was in lockdown mode. Internal affairs swept in like a cold front, silent, efficient, and absolutely unbothered by the looks they got. The copier stopped humming, the coffee machine blinked but didn't brew. Desks were suddenly too tidy. My inbox pinged nonstop. Officers from other departments, one from legal. A request from a retired detective I barely knew. Some were whispers of support, others frantic attempts to confirm if they'd signed anything with their name misspelled, dates pre-filled, boxes checked before they walked in. The fear was real now, because the system's illusion had cracked, and fear always follows exposure. At 10:14 a.m., Dalton called an all-command staff emergency meeting via Zoom. I wasn't invited, but the link leaked. Someone wanted me to see. He looked tired. Not rattled, never that, but older, strained around the eyes. The allegations currently circulating are based on misinterpreted logs and beta software behaviors, he said, voice calm. We are cooperating fully. No current staff member is under formal suspension. I almost laughed. He was already rewriting history, again. But the comments in the chat said otherwise. I was told to pre-fill. They said it was policy. Dalton signed off on the override install. Harrow made me file 5 blank waivers in June. It was unraveling in real time. Later that day, I walked into Alvarez's office. She was still reading the article, a red pen dangling between her fingers. You sent it? She asked. No, I said. I just made sure it couldn't stay buried. She gave a small nod. They're opening a city-wide review board, external, independent, and you've been requested to testify. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Outside, Harrow's office was empty, stripped, cleared overnight. No announcement, no farewell. Dalton, though, was still in his seat. For now. But the fortress was crumbling, and the world was watching. I wasn't naive. The system doesn't collapse in a day. But today? Today it flinched, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own department. I felt seen, heard, unshakable. Not because I won, but because I refused to vanish.